Main event time, Cody Rhodes against Seth Rollins in the Hell in a Cell. Rollins is out in polka dots for the match.
Mm-hmm.
The guy, I thought Tommy Dreamer was walking out here. So there's a massive chant for Cody before his music even plays. I mean, he just felt like the biggest star on this show. As he's walking out, this place is going crazy for him. Corey Graves says that this city has historical significance for Cody. In fact, this very arena was integral in his journey away from WWE. Very nice sentiment, but he is confusing the Allstate Arena with the Now Arena, which are not the same.
Yeah, was he referring to another incident, like during the WWE?
No, he said it while he was away from WWE.
Okay, yeah, I don't know then.
Anyway, Cody removes his jacket, and there is like a hush that falls upon this crowd. And I thought it lasted for up until Seth brought the table out. It almost felt like this crowd was a bit uncomfortable at what they were watching.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of...
And my timeline was very mixed. I think there were a lot of people that in this day and age, I think they genuinely care about these wrestlers and their well-being. And yes, you can look at what a gutsy performance this is, but I saw a lot of concern for people about this during the beginning of this, and if this was a wise decision that maybe should have been a decision taken away from Cody.
Well, again, without being a doctor, I cannot tell you whether or not something like this is different from... I cannot tell you how much more damage, he would have risked himself doing like this permanently than something else. Again, I will say I feel more comfortable with a muscle injury than, something involving the neck and the head.
Which he would not have been doing the match if that was the case of a neck or head injury.
And I have to honestly, have at least some faith in the medical professionals in the back that would have cleared him for this sort of match and this sort of performance. Again, I'd love to hear from somebody in the medical field about what this sort of tear would be like and the amount of risk that he was taking compared to something else.
Yeah, I mean, for what it was though, I mean, it was just an unbelievable performance, and I thought from both. Like, I don't think Seth should be shortchanged in.
Oh my God, are you kidding
discussion.
me?
He was terrific.
This is much of an accomplishment for Seth as it is for Cody Rhodes. I mean, he is working with a man who basically can only work with half his body, right? And the bulk of the heavy lifting literally was on Seth Rollins.
So he starts off, and early on, he is able to hit a disaster kick, and he's wincing in pain, and then hits a Cody cutter. And this crowd is just like, they're stunned at what they're watching and processing at the beginning of this. He goes for a crossroads, and Seth stops it by raking him in the eye. And Cody applies a figure four. Seth gets to the rope and then climbs to the floor, getting out a kendo stick to start nailing Cody with it, jamming the kendo stick into the pectoral region, and then sending Cody into the fence. Cody is using his left arm for offense. Like, you can even see, like, he can't even lift this arm. It's like, it is so debilitating for him. The steel steps are incorporated and blasted onto the bad side of Cody. And then Seth reveals that he has brought a polka dot weightlifting belt and begins whipping Cody with the belt over and over again, which is going to just make his trip home that much more comfortable.
Well, listen,
welts all over your back.
Hey, man, if you're going to go out anyway, then sure, why not? This is a guy who's willing to burn himself, on TV just for a TV match.
So then a table is brought out by Rollins, and this crowd just comes alive at this point at the sight of the table, to the point that they're chanting, "Thank you, Rollins." And Rollins ends up setting up the table and missing a splash, crashing through the table. And it's Cody that takes the polka dot weightlifting belt, tosses it away, and he goes under the ring, and he has his own bag with a cowbell inside. And this leads to our impromptu cowbell match, between a Texas bull rope match between these two in the middle of the ring, where he challenges Rollins to tie his wrist to the rope. And they have this tug of war, ending with Cody nailing him with the cowbell and generating a 2 count. Cody then stops a powerbomb, hits the first crossroads of the match, which Rollins kicks out of, and Rollins just snaps the arm into the mat and power bombs Cody through a table in the corner. And they've got this camera angle down at mat level, and right at 2.5, Cody on his bad side gets the shoulder up, and it was an incredible near fall because you're seeing the bad side of the arm and how much it takes him just to get the shoulder off of the mat. Rollins brings out the sledgehammer, and he is stopped by Cody. Seth goes for the pedigree. Cody counters it, and Cody hits the heel turn. The pedigree.
I mean, in this context, though, I mean, I'm not so sure.
I'm just saying, he finally hit the move.
Yes.
He hits it, and Cody continues going after him, slides into the ring, and by the way, the pedigree was a kick out for Rollins. And then as Rollins gets back into the ring, he nails Cody with a curb stomp. Rollins then hits a crossroads. Cody rolls through. He hits his own. So both are down, courtesy of the crossroads that each one is hit. And Cody beats him to the sledgehammer. He can't hold on to it with his arm. He kicks the sledgehammer away from Seth and hits back-to-back crossroads, stops, takes the sledgehammer, and nails Seth with the sledgehammer, keeping him down in 24 minutes and 21 seconds. What's going to be a memorable match, and one that is what was both gruesome and compelling to watch for the 24.5 minutes that they had. But this will be a match that is going to always be tied to Cody.
Yes, it will be. And I think, when it comes time for Seth Rollins to have that retrospective about his career, this is as much, again, his performance and his masterpiece, I will say as well. I was not expecting this, even with the injury. I think at most, Cody could have come out here. He could have, done a few spots. And I think even that Cody cutter attempt on it in its own, into a stomp from Seth Rollins, for instance, 1, 2, 3, it would have been not as satisfying, but I think we would have all understood, especially seeing the visual of what that injury looked like. The fact that they ended up having the type of match that they ended up having is just incredible. Absolutely incredible. Using, this real life injury to some great storytelling advantage. The bull rope was really interesting to me because I had wondered if that was always the plan or if it was brought in here as some sort of measure to maybe help the fact that he only had one side to work with, and maybe allowed him some sort of extra gimmickry to get through the match. In either case, I thought that it was used very effectively. I think the Triple H callbacks with the sledgehammer were also very well used, and ultimately a storyline that they kind of hit on only in this final week is the fact that both of them are after Triple H's throne. And Seth Rollins, of course, somebody who very much thinks that he's the rightful owner of it. And Cody Rhodes also thinking that as well. So I thought that was a really nice touch and effectively used here. But beyond that, I mean, we saw a lot here in the form of the crossroads counters. We almost had like a All Japan Pro Wrestling no-sell type of exchange here between, Cody getting hit with Seth Rollins crossroads and then toughing it out so that he could hit his own before the double down. And then the finish itself, the two crossroads and ending with the sledgehammer. Again, very symbolic of the Triple H throne storyline. Just a wonderful piece of storytelling here, I would say, and incredible professional wrestling performance from both men.
Yeah, and you come out of it with Cody, in fact, winning all three of the matches, which was, I think that's really significant of, this kind of a match that you very well could have had Seth just win and you have the out. But instead, I think for just the legend of this match, the way it worked out, I think they went for the incredible gutsy performer gutting out this victory. And this is an incredible 3-match series that they had from WrestleMania to Backlash. And now this one very different from the other two, but all to me, incredible matches when you look at them. And I think with Seth as well, that's, I'm very interested to see where he goes after this, because just looking at the Raw side of things, my thought was that it is now the time you sort of turn Seth around into a babyface role, because you really need some baby faces and you don't really need another mid-card heel that Seth is at the moment. So I'm kind of curious where he goes after this as well. But I think there's going to be a lot of interest in Raw tomorrow night just to see the follow-up of this and how much circulation these photos are going to get, people that did not watch the show. And this is going to be one of those that I think people are going to seek it out just because this is going to have a lot of attention for all the reasons that we've listed.
It's the type of performance that almost makes you wonder if like any mainstream press might pick it up, because it's not just storyline. Like you saw on TV, somebody looking like that go through an incredible physical feat, having this sort of match. So that'll be interesting to see. And if they certainly, like, honestly, they could have turned Rollins as a babyface at any point, and this crowd would have bought into it, because time and time again, like, despite maybe how you and I might feel about that fake laugh, in ring, he has always been a tremendous performer. And every single time he does one of these matches, whether it be against Cody or whether it be against Roman Reigns, he is flirting with the crowd, really wanting to cheer for him. And they did here in this match. So they just have to pull that trigger. And,
all you have to do tomorrow is Cody gives his heartfelt speech tomorrow night. Seth confronts him, comes out, and instead it's the two embrace in the middle after this trilogy that they have had.
Didn't they already do that? I guess he came out and challenged him again, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, I think to like cap off the feud and the two just, that could be a direction you go. You really need baby faces at this moment. One other thought that does come to mind as well is that I think after you see something like this, I think like it's really tough. I would say, like, if you are a performer, like, and you're dealing with an injury, I think it's really hard to have both. Like, you're conflicted, I think, by the amount that it took to go through with a match like this, and at the same time, you want your locker room to be able to listen to their bodies that might not have anything as grotesque as this visually, but at the same time, like, it does send a message about, like, how can I complain when I just watched this from somebody else in our locker room?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. You do sort of set a precedent. At the same time, I mean, these moments are sort of like the magic of like sports that we kind of, put up on a pedestal, whether it be in a real sporting activity or the Olympics or, in professional wrestling. I mean, this was, I think, a special circumstance, considering that it was the main event. It was the only Hell in a Cell match on a show called Hell in a Cell. I feel like there's some extra leeway being given to a main eventer in a scenario like this, where a show completely hinges on him. If it was somebody injured, let's say on a, undercard match, or a kickoff match, for instance, I don't think they'd be allowed to go out looking like this. So, but yeah, like if you're talking about an independent wrestling show where like a wrestler has this sort of injury and wants his little moment in front of like 23 people, maybe it sets that precedent. But I don't feel like the WWE did wrong in this scenario.
It would have been an interesting dilemma that let's just say he had the partial tear. And do you go ahead and risk a full tear by going out and doing a main event match? That's a really difficult question, because are you just looking at tonight versus, okay, this guy could be out for a month, but a full tear, he's out a lot longer. Instead, the full tear, it's like the damage is done at that point.
Yeah. Well, I think the answer would be yes in this scenario. But again, considering the fact that it's the only Hell in a Cell match on this show, and because, he's arguably the biggest babyface on the show. And let's also remember, like, this is professional wrestling. They could have just gone out there and delivered a 5-minute match. That was still satisfying while being protective. They instead went all out. Again, no pun intended here, with the match, and focused the story of the match on that injury, working over that injury throughout the whole thing. And I don't know if that's just simply them saying, well, he's going to go for surgery anyway, let's just kind of kill this thing as much as we can. But seeing the result tonight, it's hard for me to find a complaint. Before we get to some calls here, let's go to some super chats. And we thank all of you guys watching us live at youtube.com/postwrestling. Please subscribe, everybody. We're trying to get those numbers up to get these shows a bit more visible as possible. DJ Convoy sends $5 as well. He says, Dangerous and irresponsible to let Rhodes compete. And winning is baffling. WWE should be held to task for this. Cody should be held to task for this.
I mean, you're going to have that response from a lot of people. And I think not knowing, what was assessed with Cody. I mean, we are going based on, like, visually, it looked horrifying. And I can't say, like, that opinion but again, is wrong.
We're not doctors, like, sometimes bruises are, again, I honestly can't say. But it's also, I think, wrong for us to say, like, what they shouldn't have done either. But without knowing a bit more detail about exactly like what this sort of thing looks like. I mean, you've seen, John, UFC fights where like guys continued after like having muscles that were like, like pulled off and, down to like, a portion of their bicep, for instance.
They could have told him like very well that, like, listen, you have done as much damage as you're going to. It looks terrible. You're not going to do anything worse. I actually, of what he lists here, I would not be holding Cody to task for this. I think if he was willing to go ahead with this, like that is the company and their medical staff to make that call. If you're Cody, you're headlining this show and you want to go ahead with it, I totally understand having that mindset to want to go ahead with it. And, if their medical staff deemed it too dangerous, yeah, you would hope that they would step in and do that. I can't say if that was the case or not, but I completely understand why Cody wanted to go ahead and do this. And the fact that he did 25 minutes of a match, like they earmarked that amount of time for the match. So they obviously had confidence that he could go ahead and do this of what had been laid out. They could have just structured a 10-minute match and it's Seth just destroying him and limiting like what was necessary to get to a finish and a satisfying enough match. But they blocked off the last half hour of the match for this, of the show for this.
I'd go as far as to say, I mean, I know it was probably an incredibly painful, 25 minutes for Cody, but I think in his brain, he was loving every second of it. This is the type of moment he's been after. Every time he's gone out there and has fallen through like a giant ladder or has lit himself on fire for the sake of wanting, or dove off of a top of a cage with a giant moonsault or something like that. He's been looking for moments like these. He's been looking for his Mick Foley Hell in a Cell type of moment. The type of moment.
This was that for his career. And you can listen, it might sound crazy to the average person. For a wrestler, if that is what you are seeking, it's like, okay, I might do worse damage to this, but like this is what I'm doing this for, and I am going to be able to live off of this, and this will be remembered for as long as I'm wrestling. People are going to remember this performance, and that is worth the risk that I am willing to take and the potential additional damage I might do. Like that is a calculated decision that some of these performers make.